Welcome to Fearless Friday, your day to reclaim your weekend and your life. This week we're going to talk about perceived barriers. Now, perceived barriers are barriers that we think are in place based off of some understanding or some past experience. Now, for an example of a perceived barrier from a past experience, let's just say that you have been in the accounting field for 5 years and you leave your current company and you go and interview for another company, and they tell you, well, because you don't have a college education, we can't hire you, or the applicant that we're looking for needs a college education. So then you say, oh, well, I don't have a college education, and so you just kind of start to mull that over in your brain, and then the next interview that you go on, you start to play yourself down because you know you don't have a degree in accounting or a college education, which you were just turned down for from a previous job, or that previous interview. So this can kind of create a snowball effect, and usually does. Now, another perceived barrier, and I love to give this example because it's so visual, is when pet owners who have animals or pets, typically dogs, who want to use an invisible fence. Now, this invisible fence typically is this buried cable under the ground that emits an electric signal that is tied to a frequency that's on a shock collar for a dog. Now, it's, sometimes they use it on cats and whatnot, but typically it's for dogs. Now, how they train dogs or these animals and pet owners that use this type of fence is they bury the cable, and then every 5 feet or so put a little flag that's stuck in the ground. And so as the dog or the animal approaches that flag or that line of flags, the dog or animal will see that line and go, ooh, I wonder what this is. And then all of a sudden, once they cross it or come even to the plane of it, they get a shock on their neck. And then all of a sudden, the animal pulls back and goes, ooh, I don't like that. And then, so, most of the time the animal will test various points in that line of flags and then realize and learn that I'm not supposed to cross here because if I do, I'll get a shock. And so after a while, typically it's about 2 to 4 weeks, they'll move the flags from 5 feet to 10 feet to 20 feet, and then finally actually just take all the flags down. And so that animal knows that if I cross this area of the yard, I'm gonna get shocked, and so I'm not gonna do that. Well, typically, and many times what happens is that electricity that's going from that main cable to the collar gets disconnected because that animal is trained to say, oh, well, this is that barrier and I can't cross it because if I cross it, I'm gonna get shocked. Now, so that is a barrier that animal still perceives is there, whether or not that particular fence is activated or not. Now, this is something that happens frequently with us humans, is we get burned, or we come into a roadblock or a stumbling block, or we try something, it doesn't work, or someone lets us down, or someone says, no, you can't do this because of this. And so all these things kind of mount, and then we start to have all of these boxes and barriers and these perceived barriers that we think are holding us back. Now, one of the things that I've experienced in my life is for years I didn't have a college education. And I thought to myself, well, nobody's going to take me seriously in the business world because I don't have a college education, or I don't have a certificate with, for this or for that. And so what I did was I created that energy in my life, is that when I would work, I really knew my work, I really knew the jobs that I was doing and was very good at it. However, because I had that mindset of thinking, because I don't have a degree or a certificate, so-and-so isn't going to take me seriously. And that's what happened. And years later, I did get my college education and my degrees and whatnot and my certificates. And then I felt this shift in my energy thinking, okay, now people are going to start taking me seriously. But I know a lot of people who have years of experience, who don't have a college education, who are just as equally as qualified as people and those who have degrees and certifications and whatnot. And that's just one small example of how people can hold themselves back. Now, one of the, these perceived barriers happen in all aspects of our life. They happen in relationships, in finances, in careers, in basically all facets of our life, and in your intimate relationships, in your social situations. Now, one of the things that I always ask people when I'm speaking to them in my coaching and whatnot is, how would you feel if this barrier was gone, if it was no longer present? Okay, so let's just say that your barrier, maybe it's, well, I don't have a certificate or a degree, and so people aren't going to take me seriously, or I can't even apply for that, or I'm not going to apply for that because of this barrier. And so I say, well, okay, so what if that was gone? What if that degree wasn't even an option? What if they don't care if you have a degree? How would you conduct yourself? How would you feel about this? Okay. For relationships, what if you have multiple divorces and you meet someone and you're thinking, oh, well, this person isn't going to be interested in me because I have X number of divorces. Okay, well, that's a perceived barrier. Okay, or I have a bankruptcy, and because I have a bankruptcy, I'm not going to be able to get financed. That's a perceived barrier. So look at these perceived barriers and what would happen? How would you feel if those barriers were not there? How would you feel? How would you conduct yourself? And that's this week's challenge. I challenge you to look at your perceived barriers that you have in your life and test them. See if they're still there. Okay? See if you go to a job interview and one job interview says, well, you don't have a college education, so we can't hire you. Okay, well, that was true for this particular event. Now, okay, so like the next time that you go, pretend that barrier is not there. Know how skillful you are. Have confidence in your abilities. And say, well, it doesn't matter if I don't have a college education because I know my stuff. And when you go in and when you interview, act that way, act accordingly. Be proud of all the skills that you have. Be proud of who you are as a person and what you have to offer in your relationship. Be proud of your finances now. And, speak to the people, the finance people or whatever, and tell them about the bankruptcy and the situation behind it and everything else. So these are just small examples of how barriers can hinder our everyday happenings and basically our confidence in how we conduct our life and how we conduct ourselves every single day. Okay? Now, so with this week's challenge, look at the barriers that you perceive to have in your life, whether it's communication barriers with someone, whether it's relationship barriers, financial barriers, educational barriers, any type, ethnicity, barriers. A lot of people perceive, well, because I'm a certain race or because I'm a certain skin tone, this is a perceived barrier, or this is a barrier that I believe is in place. And that's not so much the case anymore. In some places, yes, it is, or, maybe even religious barriers. Okay? So look at all these little facets, all these barriers that you perceive to have in your life, and ask yourself, how would I feel if this barrier was no longer present, if this wasn't even an issue anymore? Okay? And act as if that barrier was gone. Act as if that's a non-issue. And I challenge you this week to test out those barriers. Okay, test out to see if that electric fence is still electrified. Okay? Some places it may be, but most it probably won't be. So allow yourself to see each situation as a unique situation. And allow yourself to say, okay, well, this was a barrier for this one. Okay, that's fine. But the situation that I'm in right now is a brand new situation, and I can start fresh, and I can look at it without barriers and without boxes. And looking at the world without boxes and without barriers and having confidence in yourself and confidence in your skills is a surefire way to become fearlessly inspired. Well, I hope that you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends on Facebook and Twitter. If you've really loved it, please subscribe so you won't miss one single episode of Fearless Friday. If you haven't already received your Fearlessly Inspired e-kit, which is a free kit for download on my website, head on over to my website and click on the subscribe button, and you will receive that link in your inbox. And also, I send weekly newsletters with lots of great deals and lots of great little tidbits of information for you every single Friday. And I hope that you have enjoyed your time with me today. I know I have. Until next time, I'm wishing you a fearlessly inspired day. Mwah! Bye-bye.